All right, guys, doing some channel updates here. I have some positive information here about the future of the channel. I'm also talking about Stephen King books that I have not yet read. I recently got out of a reading slump. I'm back into reading now. I'm actually going to be finishing Death Masks, the fifth book in the Dresden Files series here, in just a little while. And I want to go on a tear reading Stephen King. Any one of you who have watched my channel know that I'm on my quest to read every Stephen King book, and there are some left that I have to read. I've completed 51 Stephen King books so far, so I've read the bulk of them. I have the bulk of the Stephen King multiverse. I'm actually reading, and I'm more than halfway through it now. I'm reading The Drawing of the Three for the fourth time, and I expect to have that finished here probably sometime next week. But there are quite a few books by Stephen King that I haven't completed yet, and some popular ones. So I just want to talk about these real quick. You know, I know that this is one of Stephen King's least recognized and least celebrated novels. This is The Tommyknockers. It's a science fiction novel. You know, although I haven't read every King book, the ones that I haven't read, I generally know what they're about because I've had so many conversations with people about them. But The Tommyknockers is about a woman who finds an alien spacecraft in her backyard, I think, and she digs it up. And I think this craft has some kind of malevolent influence over the town that they live in. I think it's in Maine, but I really don't know much about the Tommyknockers. I know that they made a movie. They might have made more than one movie, but it's a book that I have to read. It's one of his longer pieces, and it's a science fiction by King. And I haven't read a whole lot of science fiction by King, so I'm looking forward to getting the Tommyknockers under my belt. You know, I've got a lot of recommendations for reading it. I see that it has a fairly low Goodreads rating. It might be the lowest rated Stephen King book that there is on Goodreads, but I'm looking forward to reading it nonetheless. Another one that I have to read here, guys, is a really popular one. You know, a lot of people have watched the movie for this, and they don't even realize that it was written by Stephen King. One of Stephen King's two great prison epics. This one is The Green Mile. Now, the reason I haven't read this one is because I saw the movie, and I thought it was just a great movie with John Coffey. Of course, I already know what happens in this, which is why I haven't read it yet, but it's been years since I saw the movie, and I only roughly remember what it's about. So I know that John Coffey is arrested for a crime that he didn't commit. He's some kind of magical, holy type man. And I don't know how well that's explained in the novel. I'm interested in to find out exactly what and who John Coffey is. So I'm looking forward to reading The Green Mile. It's a book that I just have to read. You know, a lot of people know that King wrote Shawshank Redemption or Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. So many people have watched this movie and didn't realize that it's a Stephen King novel, but I'm looking forward to reading The Green Mile. I have a feeling it's going to be one of my favorite King books when I read it. I actually have the little serial installments that it was originally published as. So looking forward to The Green Mile. Kindle Surprise. Loved The Green Mile. One of my favorites. I have a feeling it's going to be a hell of a drama. You know, so many people recognize Stephen King as the master of horror, but he writes great drama. That's why Hearts in Atlantis is my favorite Stephen King book, because it's such a dramatic, emotional, deeply psychological, just a beautiful read is Hearts in Atlantis. I've only read it once. It's actually time for me to do a reread on that one. You know, I actually did a video recently with Bev Vincent, and it's a video that's doing really good. It's working toward 4,000 views now. People watch it every day. It's called The Dark Tower Explained. And as I was talking with Bev in that video, I realized, of course, I already knew that Bev is an expert on the Stephen King multiverse. And it made me realize that there are a lot of King books that I need to get read. I've got to read the ones I gave up on, like Sleeping Beauties. What else? I gave up on Cell, which I was not a huge fan of Cell, but I'm going to go back for these things and I'm going to finish them this time. It actually started about a year ago. There were two big Stephen King novels, King's two longest novels I had given up on in the past. His two most important novels, probably outside of the Dark Tower series, It and The Stand. Those were books that I tried to read. I couldn't get through them. They were too long. I wasn't into them. When I went back for It, I actually really enjoyed it. That is a hell of a novel. And when I went back for The Stand a few months ago, I actually enjoyed that one. That was actually the last book that I completed before I hit my reading slump, was The Stand by Stephen King. So I'm going back to finish the books by King that I gave up on, that I didn't finish. And that actually brings me to Cujo, because this is one that I started probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and I didn't finish it. And the reason was that in Cujo, it starts pretty well. We're in Castle Rock again. It seemed like it was just taking a long time for anything to get going in this novel. Like, I was waiting for this malicious dog to come out and terrorize, and I was like halfway through it, nothing happening. So I'm looking forward to going back for Cujo and giving it another try this time. I think it's going to be a better experience. You know, I had a bad experience with It the first time I tried to read it. Enjoyed it when I went back and started it anew. Same thing happened with The Stand. So Cujo is going to be a much faster read than either one of those novels. And it's an important piece of Castle Rock. You know, Needful Things is the Castle Rock novel, in my opinion. But I like Castle Rock. I liked The Sundog, which is a prelude kind of to Castle Rock, or to Needful Things, rather. And I've got to get Cujo. It's one of his most recognized pieces. Everyone on Earth, it seems, knows that Stephen King wrote Cujo. So I'm looking forward to going back for that one and giving it a second try and finishing it up this time and actually doing a review on it and talking about it and getting that piece of the Stephen King multiverse within my understanding. Gerald's Game is a novel by Stephen King that I have not read. This is actually one of King's least highly rated novels. I know that it gets a pretty low rating on Goodreads. You know, it's interesting because I really liked Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. And when King set out to write Dolores Claiborne, he initially intended it to be a project called In the Path of the Eclipse. And it was going to be a 2-in-1 novel with Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne in one book. 2 novels in one book, 2 intimately intertwined novels in one book. King later abandoned the project, but there's something interesting. If you open up Dolores Claiborne, you will see that there is a map in the front of the book. Dolores Claiborne takes place during an eclipse. That same eclipse takes place during Gerald's Game. So even though King kind of abandoned the project, there are some things happening in Gerald's Game that have an influence on the plot in Dolores Claiborne and vice versa. So I'm not hugely excited about Gerald's Game. I know it's about a woman that's handcuffed to a bed throughout the entire plot, so I'm kind of questioning how suspenseful it's going to be. But it's a rather short book. Maria loved Gerald's Game. Maybe I will enjoy it. You know, it's going to be a quick read like Cujo, so I think it's another Castle Rock novel. That might be wrong. I can't remember where Dolores Claiborne takes place, but I am looking forward to finally getting Gerald's Game under my belt. You know, I want to have Bev Vincent back on the program and talk about every Stephen King book over a period of about a 3-hour interview. So I've got to get these things read so I know what they're about. Here's another one that I bought. I bought it, I don't know, 6 months ago probably. It's one of the newer King books, and I know people have really given this one a high rating. It gets quite a high rating on Goodreads. The Institute. I don't know much about what this is about. Of course, you can see here, guys, on the cover, it looks like a little boy in a prison, a train car prison. And I know that there are psychic children in this that are taken to some kind of institute, the Institute, and they're exploited somehow. It kind of reminds me of what's happening in the Blue Heaven prison in the Dark Tower series. I don't know. I guess I I bought the Institute because I needed it for my collection. However, I wasn't like hugely excited to read it. However, everyone seems to just love this thing, the Institute. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I'd like to read it before the end of the year. I don't know. I just sounds like a weird plot. I don't know what I'm going to think of it. I really don't. So hopefully I enjoy the Institute. I will be happy getting it under my belt, though. The Institute was my first King book. Loved it. Well, that's inspiring. I'm not sure what the Institute is about. And I wonder how many connections there are to the Dark Tower series. Probably relatively few, but I'm going to read it anyhow. Got to read it. I'm on my quest to read every Stephen King book, so I've got to read it. Isn't The Eclipse in The Stand too, or am I confused? That's not right. The Eclipse is a part of Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne. I don't believe there is any eclipse that takes place during The Stand. I recently read it and I don't recall that. And if there is anything like that going on, it would be unrelated to what happens in Dolores Claiborne and Gerald's Game. Pet Sematary. Now, this is one that I really am looking forward to reading, and I think that this is actually going to be my next read. Halloween's coming up. Last year, I had this big idea that I was going to read Pet Sematary as a celebration for Halloween, and I didn't do it. So it's time. This is one of King's most popular works. This is huge, Pet Sematary. Some people would say this is the best Stephen King novel, probably. And I did a Stephen King biography video here on the channel some months ago, and while I was investigating for that, I came to realize that Pet Sematary was inspired by real events that took place in Stephen King's life. King, when he was young, he published Carrie. He started to get some recognition in the literary world. He published Salem's Lot, and his old alma mater contacted him to be a professor there, University of Maine. So when that happened, King moved with his family to this new house that was right on a highway. And it turns out that there were a lot of animals that got killed on this highway, which gave King the idea for a novel. One day, King's son, Joe Hill, who's a popular novelist now, he was a little boy at the time, he almost ran in front of a truck out on the highway. King saved him, and that scene actually makes it into Pet Sematary. I know that much about Pet Sematary. Of course, when I was a kid, I saw the original movie of the whole thing, but I think that Pet Sematary is going to be just a classic Stephen King horror novel. I read different seasons not long ago, and the biggest thing that I detected in that novel was just old Stephen King. It was old Stephen King personified, especially Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. That was such a great novella, and I think that Pet Sematary is just going to be a great read. I think it's one that I'm anticipating enjoying. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. Actually, I do know why I haven't read it yet, because I saw the damn movie, which spoils the plot. However, it has been many years since I saw the movie. So what I'd like to do, read the novel, watch the old movie again, watch the new remake of the movie. Then I'll be an expert on Pet Sematary. So I know that original version of the thing was gruesome, with the kid with the medical knife. What do you call those things? That was the most gruesome scene in that old movie, was where Gage cuts the old man's tendons in the back of his foot. But yeah, I've got to read Pet Sematary. I'm reading Bitten by Lexi Foss. I'm not familiar with that one. Have you talked me into Hearts in Atlantis? You have talked me into getting Hearts in Atlantis. You think I should read the Dark Tower series first? I was talked into the Dark Tower by you as well. Have it ready. I picked up Hearts in Atlantis years ago, before I read the Tower novels. And you see, Hearts in Atlantis is a collection of stories. There are two novellas that start the collection out. The first one is called Low Men in Yellow Coats. Low Men in Yellow Coats is a Dark Tower side story. You see, in the Dark Tower series, there's a character named Ted Brautigan who walks away from what he's doing one day. And Low Men in Yellow Coats is the story about what happens with Ted Brautigan while he's on break from what he's doing in the Dark Tower series. And it's all about the tower. It's all about Ted Brautigan being hunted down by the henchmen of the Crimson King, who is the antagonist in the Dark Tower series. So I would say, actually, what I was saying was, I tried to read Hearts in Atlantis, and I just couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. It surprises me that they made a movie of the thing, because anyone who would watch that movie wouldn't have a clue about what's happening, because you have to know what's going on in those Tower books to understand who Ted Brautigan is and why he's where he's at and who he's on the run from. So I would recommend putting Hearts in Atlantis off until you finished the Tower novels. Until you finished, you actually have to finish the last book, I think. There are 7 books in that Tower series, and you have to finish at least the 6th one to get to where Ted Brautigan's at, to understand what's happening in Low Men in Yellow Coats. And Low Men in Yellow Coats is my favorite Dark Tower side story. And I just love that Hearts in Atlantis collection. Put it off till you read the Tower books. Start that Tower series immediately. Is Insomnia as tough a read as people make it out to be? You know, I read Insomnia, and it was probably one of the most painful books that I've ever read. And I read it after I finished the Tower series, and I had some conception of what was going on in it because I had read the Tower books, and that was a hard read. It was physically a struggle for me to get through that thing. I did enjoy the last bit of Insomnia because everything about the Dark Tower comes into play right at the end of it. So it's really illuminating as far as the series goes. Like the last 50 pages of Insomnia are a great read for Tower fans. It's almost a must read for that situation. But yeah, Insomnia was one of the most painful Stephen King books I've ever read. It's just a very slow going, unusual thing. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of it. I want the Dark Tower too. I have a thing for a series at the moment. I would recommend just jumping right in with the Gunslinger. You know, I'm actually reading for the 4th time, and I'm going to get back into it as soon as I turn this off, The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. This is my 2nd favorite Stephen King book behind Hearts in Atlantis. This is the most imaginative Stephen King book I've ever read. This thing is a hoot, and it's very different from the first installment in the series. You see, when Stephen King was writing the Dark Tower series, The Gunslinger, the first installment, it started as a serial publication in a magazine. I think it was Fantasy and Sci-Fi magazine or something. King wrote The Gunslinger, I think, in 6 installments in 6 different magazine publications of that fantasy magazine. I would love to own those magazine publications, but he was very young when he wrote it, and you can just tell that he becomes a better author in this one. I love The Gunslinger, by the way. I've read it 4 times. I would recommend just getting into it. You see, I'm doing this project here on the channel where I do a guided tour walkthrough of every Dark Tower novel, which is why I'm going back through this again. But that's another issue. I would highly recommend reading it. And if you love it, get yourself a copy of this. This is the Complete Concordance, revised and updated by Robin Firth, who I'm going to be reaching out to as soon as I finish The Drawing of the Three. I want her to come on the program and talk with me about the Tower series. This is like a Bible concordance. It has all the characters in it, all the different places and the ceremonies, and it's just a concordance, a literal concordance. I wish every epic fantasy series, every great series had a concordance with it, because this is just fun. It says, actually on the back, it says characters and genealogies, magical objects and forces, midworld and otherworld places, portals and magical places, maps, timelines, dialects, songs and prayers and rhymes, political and cultural references, and connections to Stephen King's other works. This is a masterpiece companion to the Dark Tower series, but I'd recommend reading The Gunslinger. If you're not thrilled by it, I would recommend not fully formulating your opinion on the series until you complete this book, The Drawing of the Three. It's brilliant. Let me get to these comments here, guys. Have you read Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chizmore? I have not. You know, I actually talked to Chizmore on this channel. There's an interview that I did with him where we talk about his work with Stephen King. He's going to be coming back on as soon as the third Gwendy's book hits the market. He's going to be coming on. I'm going to ask him, because he's great friends with Stephen King, if there would be any potential to have King come on the program with Richard Chizmar to promote their book. I highly doubt it's going to happen, but I'm going to try it. God, that would be the heyday of this channel if I could get Stephen King on this damn thing. But I have not read Chasing the Boogeyman. I would like to read it. And maybe if I do read it, I will maybe have him on the channel to talk about it. The Blood Alliance series. I'm not familiar with that one. Bit off topic. What's up with your jiu-jitsu and how long have you been doing it? I actually competed in my first jiu-jitsu tournament Saturday and I got killed, which was both discouraging and inspiring simultaneously. I've got a lot to work on with that. I'm actually going to buy a wrestling mat and put it here in my home. There's a lot I've got to work on with that. I've been doing it for over a year and I feel like I should have made more progress than I have so far. And I've only averaged going to the gym like twice a week. I really need to get that up to 3 times a week. You know, I'd like to sometime within my lifetime get up to the blue belt promotion. I'd be a badass by that time. But I've got a long way to go before I get that far. But yeah, I've got to get a wrestling mat and put it here at the house so that I can work on what I'm doing outside of that gym. Reading The Wastelands right now. That's the 3rd book in the series, and a good one. You know, I've only read that once. I can't wait to get through the Drawing of the Three. You know, it's extremely painful what I'm doing with this Dark Tower series. I did a video here on the channel. It's the best video I ever did. It's called The Gunslinger by Stephen King, a guided tour of the novel. And what I do in that, it's a summary, but it's a much more in-depth summary than anyone has ever done. I'm the only one to ever do this for The Gunslinger. What I'm doing here and what I'm doing now, because I'm preparing the 2nd episode of that series with the Drawing of the Three. It'll be a guided tour of the Drawing of the Three. I'm actually reading, and every time I read a page, I stop and summarize what I read. And that takes a long time to get through a book like that, to summarize every page of the book. It's a ton of work. And then once I get it done, I'll have to go through and clean everything up and rewrite it a few times to get it to sound like a script. Then I'll have to record that script by speaking it into my microphone so that I can get the narration done. Then I've got to put all the pictures in with it and all the text and everything. It's going to be probably a couple 100 hours worth of work for that one video. But I'm actually doing a guided tour of the entire series. I can't wait to get past the Drawing of the Three so that I can read The Wastelands again, which I've only read one time. And it's probably been about 10 years now. So I'm looking forward to getting past the Drawing of the Three again. Just ordered the Dark Tower box set. Can't wait. Which one did you get for that? Did you get the paperback set that has kind of like a yellow coloring to it? What I really want is a matching hardback set. My Dark Tower books are right here, and they're all just mismatched. They're a bunch of mismatched paperbacks with one hardback, which is The Wind Through the Keyhole. Yeah, Hearts in Atlantis is a good one. It's a collection of 5 stories in that one. Currently reading the Dresden Files. I'm going to be finishing the 5th installment in the Dresden Files today, which is Death Masks. I'm 92% through it, so I'm looking forward to getting that finished up. I might go right into Pet Sematary once I finish that. I'm going to the Outlander series and the Wheel of Time series. Can't wait for them. You know, I tried to read Wheel of Time book 1. Didn't finish it. I got halfway through. I think I was like 404 pages through. And it seemed to be slow going for me. I'd like to go back and try it again. And I will. But I also want to read Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. So many people have just celebrated this book. And I have it here in paperback, Outlander. This is a massive novel. By the way, guys, I'm ordering a new camera tomorrow because this camera is a piece of trash that I'm working on. You can probably tell that it's a piece of trash and it's going to be put away for good within the next few days. I'm ordering a proper camera so that I can have a good, clear picture. And it's not the camera that I really want, but it'll be a good camera for the meantime. Has a nice little stand with it. So we're going to be upgrading what's going on here on the channel. And I'm going to be posting a lot more and changing the style of things here. So it should be fun, but I can't wait to get this camera that I'm looking at put away. I don't want to ever use it again. I hate it. You should do a collab with Mike Book Reviews. Your channel looks a lot like his in regard to King. I've watched his channel a few times, and I actually reached out to him to do a collaboration, and he did not respond. A lot of times it's hard as a smaller channel because my channel never blew up like the Mike's Book Reviews did, or Daniel Green's did, or so many others did. I'm fortunate that I've got the amount of activity that I have because I actually have an audience that watch my videos and everything. But a lot of times it's just basically impossible, unless you know somebody that runs one of those big channels, to get them to come down to a smaller channel and do an episode. It's hard to get them to do it. So, oh well. Mike does a really good channel, and I've watched his, and I've tried to learn some things from him because I think that one thing that he's good at is just going on and just talking for, it's easy for me to do that on a live stream because I'm just going off whatever comes to mind. I'm reading the comments and everything, just talking about whatever. It's no problem, right? That's when I actually thought about turning this channel into a live show program because, to the best of my knowledge, there is no literary-based live show program that broadcasts regularly at the same time. I thought, well, maybe that could be pretty good. If I had an actual live show that was about books that we broadcast every day at the same time, say, 8 o'clock in the evening or whatever. And it would be a whole hell of a lot easier for me to do it that way. Because it's so much easier just to turn the computer on and just start talking about whatever. I put a few minutes of thought into what I'm going to do before I jump on here. Like, I knew I wanted to talk about what Stephen King books I have to read, but when I'm recording a video to do editing and everything, sometimes it can be a challenge because I have these certain bullet points I want to hit, and I can mess it up and have to redo it and all this stuff. It can become a headache. And Mike, that does Mike's Book Reviews, seems to do really well at just keeping a narration going without messing it up. So I don't know. But I will be posting a lot here. As soon as I get that camera, I'm going to be really happy about it. I actually ordered a really nice camera for this channel. What happened was I had a good camera and I broke it. So I ordered another camera. It was trash. I'm basically shooting probably with not a good enough, clear enough image is what I don't like about this camera. But I ordered a nice camera to shoot in 4K. I was all excited about getting it. And there was a problem where it was an autofocus camera and you could not set it to manual focus. And it was like in and out every time I moved. It was all over the place. It was a nightmare. It was the perfect crystal clear image. I was so happy about it, but I just couldn't use it. So I had to send it back. But I will have a better camera next week. When I put up a video, it will be with a much nicer camera that I'm using now. What's your favorite Harry Potter book? That's actually the third one, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I like the Harry Potter series. I'm only 3 books in, and it's been about a year now, more since I read the third one. I'm overdue for reading that 4th one. I liked the first book a lot. I thought it was so unique. It was no wonder it blew up to be the biggest damn thing that was ever written when I read it. Harry Potter probably is the most successful fiction series / story that's ever been written. The only thing I can think that's maybe up there with it would be The Lord of the Rings. Of course, the Bible is the most popular book, but I'm talking about just something that's written as a novel, right? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. What has been the most popular, successful story that's ever been written? Be it a single novel, be it a series. I would say that Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings are both up there. They're both up there. I read The Lord of the Rings for the first time earlier this year. I thought it was phenomenal. The Hobbit is a novel that I'm going to read before the end of the year. I'm looking forward to reading that and talking about it here on the channel. But what was I talking about? Yeah, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. The first book, I thought it was really good. The second book seemed like it was basically a repeat of the first book. Same Harry Potter at school again, same antagonist. I was like, oh, hopefully this doesn't happen every book because I'm going to get sick of this real quick. However, the third book seemed like it was fresh. There was a different antagonist in play for the third book. It was those beings that were out hunting for he who should not be named. I'm having trouble remembering the plot, what those things were that were called, but they were the antagonist in the book. Those prison guards from Azkaban. Can't remember what they were called, but there was time travel involved in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I thought it was a really good novel. So I'm looking forward to going into the fourth one. I'm overdue for it. Loved Billy Summers. Looking forward to Gwendy's final task. You know, I was thinking, what Stephen King book do I want to read next? Because I need to do one for the channel. I'm trying to get back into the channel here. And I thought about maybe I should just read Billy Summers. I've heard that that's really good, that King put a lot of time and effort into it, I've heard. Because I think his book previous to that was Later. And a lot of people weren't big on Later. It seemed like it was a quick project, a little tiny paperback. I heard that Billy Summers is a damn good book. I've heard two sides to the story on that one, but it seems like most people that have read it thought that it was quite good. You should do these live formats in your other channel too. You know, I could do that. You know, on my other channel, guys, by the way, everyone, before I forget, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, hold on, I'm getting the link for it. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to my other channel, I have another channel. It's a philosophical type channel, and it's also literary based. Everybody that I have on it for an interview has written a book. They're authors. It's all about physics and idealism and different philosophical subjects. I just put the link for the channel in the comments. If you can click on that link and go over there and subscribe real quick, I would appreciate that, as I'm trying to get some momentum going on that channel. Soon, I'm going to be having the physicist, philosopher Tom Campbell on to have a conversation with computer scientist and philosopher Bernardo Kastrup. This is going to be huge for me on this other channel I've got. It's just going to be such an epic conversation about the nature of reality. So go over there and subscribe if you want to help me out. Even if you don't want to watch the channel, go over there and subscribe. Help me get the subscriber count up. I'd appreciate it, guys. Don Quixote would be up there in top fiction. You know, I'm learning Spanish now. I started learning Spanish 48 days ago. I play Duolingo every day. And I'm actually looking at a whiteboard that I have with some words on it that I'm learning. I've learned almost 500 words already. So I'm actually going to be buying, I think tomorrow I'm going to buy. Actually, what I'm going to be doing here, guys, Saturday, my library is having a bag sale. The warehouse is opening up for us to go in with bags to fill. I think I'm going to record my trip for that and put it here on the program as an episode. But what I want, because I'm learning Spanish, you know, learning a language is hugely challenging. And children's books are very hard for people to read when they're learning a language, because children's books are filled with slang and just this weird stuff. You know, you basically have to know a language to read a damn children's book in that language. But they have these things called leveled readers, where they have these books that are basically like watered down children's books. They're very straightforward, proper grammar and everything that are much easier for a beginner to read and understand than the children's book would be. They're like basically an unsophisticated children's book. And they have them in levels of difficulty. They're called leveled readers. So I want to get a box of those things. Hopefully they have some at the library sale. They probably won't because they're in Spanish. But I want to get some of those leveled readers. I have a goal. I have a goal to read a Stephen King novel in Spanish. So that's going to be fun. I will get there. It's probably going to take me a long ass time to get that far, but Don Quixote. Oh, why I even brought that up was that as I'm learning Spanish, I think I want to read a novel or two that take place in Mexico, something to inspire me because I'm learning Spanish. And I have two books that I was thinking on. Don Quixote is one. I was unhappy to find out that it actually takes place in Spain because I'm more interested in a Latino type version of Spanish. But Don Quixote, I still want to read it. I wanted to read it before I started learning Spanish. It's a long novel. Many people consider Don Quixote the first modern novel. But I want to read James Michener's Mexico. I've never read Michener before. But by the way, I'm sure you guys have heard my chair squeak. My squeaky ass chair. The chair ain't going to be here much longer. Not only am I upgrading with a new camera, I'm getting a new chair. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to be upgrading here, guys. I'm going to be upgrading on this channel and my other one. So James Michener is a historical fiction writer. This is his most popular novel, Texas. You know what Michener does in these novels is they're usually like a series of stories, and they start out prehistoric. Michener takes us like all the way back, like before the continents separated, billions of years into the past, and he'll talk about Mexico. And then we'll go forward in time, and you'll eventually get to the part where there's people, and he basically chronicles the history of a place, in this case, Texas, and in Mexico. And I think that that's really going to inspire me to want to learn language reading Michener's Mexico. I have an interest in Latino culture, especially now that I'm learning Spanish. So I want to read Mexico by James Michener. The Dementors were the name of those things. I have a friend that stopped reading King because of the Dark Tower ending. I'm on Wizard and Glass, and I'm setting myself up to be disappointed in the end. Well, I'll tell you what, I was disappointed in the ending as well. You know, in Stephen King's final installment, The Dark Tower, right before the end, there's this little note that King puts in the book. And it says, you might not want to go any further, constant reader. You might just want to set this novel down and not read the last part of it because you might not like what you're going to find at the end of this book. Of course, everyone who's ever got that far rejected King's warning and reads the end. And but I'll tell you this. You're wondering about how the Dark Tower ending is going to come about. I didn't like it, but when I started rereading the series, I read The Gunslinger for the second time, and I realized that King had forecasted the ending many times. In every one of the novels, he forecast the ending over and over and over and over again. So I realized that it did end the way that he was forecasting it. I missed every one of those forecasts when I went through it the first time. I was totally clueless and didn't know what to expect. But if you're reading Wizard and Glass, pay attention to anything that King might work into the plot concerning the ending and see if you can pick up on something before you get there. Even though the ending was originally disappointing to me, it's grown on me in time. I have a much better appreciation for it now. And it's by far my favorite story of all time. And there's something philosophically relevant about the end of the story as well. So, yeah, don't watch my interview with Bev Vincent until after you finish the series, because we spoiled the hell out of the plot in that interview. Don Quixote is one of the most popular books. That is true. It hasn't had the impact that The Lord of the Rings has had or Harry Potter has had, but as a single novel, it is one of the actually, it's one of the best selling. You know, I became aware of Don Quixote when I did a video here on the program concerning the top 10 best-selling fiction books of all time, and Don Quixote was one of those. It sold around 500 million copies. It's arguably the best-selling book in history. I actually think that's The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, though, which is hugely telling of how good that story is. Because The Da Vinci Code's only been around for not even 20 years, and it's the best-selling book in the history of the world. if you look that figure up, if you go to Google and say, how many copies has the Da Vinci Code sold? You're going to get a figure that comes up that says 80 million copies. That figure is from like 2006. Within the first 3 years of the Da Vinci Code being published, it had sold 80 million copies, and it still sells today. So at minimum, it must have sold several hundred million copies. And you can't get an updated figure on the Da Vinci Code, how many copies it sold, but I think it's probably the best-selling book in the history of the world. You know, there was a lot of mysticism behind the Da Vinci Code when Dan Brown published it, because there was this misconception that it was a piece of nonfiction. So everybody wanted to buy this to see what Dan Brown had to say about history, but it was just a novel. Everybody got it wrong. So Dan Brown, you know, Dan Brown was actually a failed pop singer before he started writing novels. He had some success before the Da Vinci Code, but when that Da Vinci Code got published, he skyrocketed in popularity to one of the most successful authors of all time. And he has what is probably the best-selling book in the history of the world, outside of the Bible and the Quran and everything. Have you read Charlie Parker books by John Connolly? Supernatural crime thriller is really good. I have not. I've heard of the author's name, but Hearts in Atlantis is my favorite book of Stephen King. That's my favorite as well. I have a friend that stopped reading. Whoops. Yeah, I'm on Wizard and Glass. Yeah, the finish. Yep. I loved the ending of The Dark Tower. Rereading Gunslinger is so much more rewarding afterwards. And I'm going through the drawing of the 3 for the 4th time. And King keeps on forecasting what's going to happen. He forecasted it so many times in The Gunslinger. If I would have had the sense to pick up on that, I would have had some idea how the story was going to end. But what I would recommend, Connor, is that you pay attention in Wizard and Glass, and you pay attention in Wolves of the Kala, to just try to pick up on anything you can about how the story's going to end. If you're keen enough, you'll be able to predict the ending before you get there. Of course, I was not, but one more book to talk about here, guys. It's another King book that I haven't read. It's a collection of short stories. It's one that's not talked about often. You don't hear this one very often. It's probably King's, it's absolutely King's biggest collection of short stories, and that is Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Now, there's a ton of short stories in this one. Let me open it here just to see. Let me see if there are any that I know of in here. In memory of Thomas Williams. Dolan's Cadillac, that's one that I read before. The End of the Whole Mess. Suffer the Little Children. The Night Flyer, I've read that one. Popsy, It Grows on You. Chattery Teeth. Dedication. The Moving Finger. Sneakers. You know they got a hell of a band. Home Delivery. Rainy Season. My Pretty Pony. Sorry, Right Number. The 10 O'Clock People. Crouched End. The House on Maple Street. The Fifth Quarter. The Doctor's Case. Umney's Last Case, Head Down, and one called Brooklyn August are in this one. You know, King's been criticized over the years by writing a publication of short stories and then publishing another book with those same short stories in them. He's done that quite a few times. I know that there are some collections where I know like the Bazaar of Bad Dreams has stories in it that were in other collections. But I actually didn't recognize most of those in that. So I don't know how Nightmares and Dreamscapes does on Goodreads. Let me pull that up real quick here. I want to see what rating, because I'm big on Goodreads. I trust Goodreads a lot. I like to see what other people have to say about books on Goodreads. Looks like it's not going to load because I have this live stream going, but no, it is going to load. Okay, Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Nightmares and Dreamscapes by Stephen King. See what it 3.94. So that's a relatively good rating. Wow, it only has 1,467 reviews. So Nightmares and Dreamscapes is one of the least read Stephen King books. But, you know, I've got to get through the Bachman books as well. So I've got a lot to do with Stephen King. I'm working toward becoming a Stephen King expert. And I'll tell you what, guys. Once I get through this bad boy, the Complete Concordance, revised and updated, after I finish my Dark Tower guided tour series. After I finish every video for that, and I've read every entry in this book, I'm actually, as I'm reading The Drawing of the Three again, I'm looking things up from time to time, and I'm putting a little check mark in pencil beside every entry in this book, so that I know what I've read and what I haven't. And when I'm done with the series, I'll go back to this and I'll read every entry that I didn't read while I was going through. After I complete my guided tour series, read every entry in this book, and finish Bev Vincent's The Road to the Dark Tower, I will be an expert on this series. You know, this is a really good book that I'm reading as I'm doing my guided tour series on here. When I finished The Gunslinger, you see what this is this book is broken up into 7 parts. Vincent covers each one of the books in a different part. Like chapter 1 is The Gunslinger, summarizes his thoughts on The Gunslinger and what it all means. Chapter 2 is The Drawing of Three, does the same. When I finished The Gunslinger, I read the first chapter in this book, and then I did my guided tour series episode for that one. So when I finish The Drawing of the Three again, I'll read in here the second part in this. So once I get through all this shit, I will be an expert on the Dark Tower series. I'm already fairly knowledgeable about it, but my connection is unstable, so this is a good time to cut it off, guys. I appreciate everyone joining me. Hey, if you're still with me, check in the comments, guys, for the link to my other channel. Anyone who goes over there and subscribes, I highly appreciate it. And I'll have a new camera coming here in just a few days. So I will be putting some effort into the channel here very soon. So stay tuned, my friends. See you later.